Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first round of our nameless MMA Takeover of We Sports Talk live show. Sixth round was taken, guys, unfortunately. I'm Justin Peck. Today on the show we got Keith Robert and Zach Katine. I hope I pronounced your last name right.
It's KT, but that's all right.
You say it's creatine? Just busting your balls, buddy. So basically, MMA Takeover has really gotten more and more popular on Sports Talk. It seems like every week, each card seems like it has more and more comments on it on the fight thread. So it's really growing a lot. It's part of why I got into MMA. Before the Takeover, I remember watching a few fights here and there. I was lucky enough to watch GSP versus Johnny Hendricks. It was probably the first fight I sat down and actually watched, and it was a great fight. Terrible decision in my opinion, but that's besides the point. Aside from that, I watched John Jones and Gustafsson, another great fight, another in some ways questionable decision. I thought they got that one right. Outside of that, it's been McGregor's mouth and Robbie Lawler's chin up until last Saturday. That's gotten me into MMA, and all the threads have really just been getting me more and more familiar with more and more fighters. Keith, what is it that got you into MMA?
Well, I'm looking up the date. I can kind of basically figure out the date when I became an MMA fan. It's been almost 20 years now. My Uncle Joe used to have this thing called a black box, where you could you get all pay-per-views for free. And I used to like WWF wrestling back then. So this was 1995. I would have been 13. I'm 34 now, so I've been an MMA fan for 21 years. So I liked WWF at the time. I'm thinking Bret Hart and Yokozuna and Shawn Michaels. Those were probably the top guys back then, and you'd probably know exactly who was the top guy back then. And my uncle saw this UFC. It was UFC 6, and he taped it. It was the debut of Tank Abbott. Tank Abbott fought in a tournament against Oleg Taktarov. My uncle taped it. He didn't watch it. They did the first 2 rounds of the tournament, and then used to do the super fight back then. And it was Ken Shamrock versus Dan Severn. Ken Shamrock choked out Dan Severn. My uncle came in, and he thought that was the end of it and turned it off. And I never got to see the finals between Tank Abbott and Oleg Taktarov. If anybody knows, Taktarov actually beat Tank Abbott. So for probably 2 or 3 months, I thought Tank Abbott was the greatest fighter in the world, because I didn't know he lost. And then I went to a local video store called Blockbuster, not Blockbuster, Major Video, and I used to, my mom would let me rent a movie. We'd let me and my 2 sisters rent a movie or something, and we'd all get to pick one each. And I'd always pick some sports documentary, Michael Jordan documentary, something like that. And I go to the sports section, and all of a sudden they have the UFCs, and I start from number 1, and I started watching every single one. And then I got more and more into it, started following guys. Now, I kind of talked to my friends. We started ordering pay-per-views. We were 14, 15, 16 years old. We'd all the pay-per-views. Now, back then, the pay-per-views were probably one every 3-4 months. Then I started getting into Pancrase. I looked up old Pancrase video, because that's where Ken Shamrock was popular from. Roughly around 1996, no, maybe 1999, I think it was. I got into Pride. I got into Pride from those old MMA magazines that were promoting Don Fry and Going to Pride and Mo Smith and Ken Shamrock. So I started following Pride. Then obviously the UFC got even bigger with the reality show and all that. But it was cool because I remember I went through the dark ages of MMA when it was blacked out, and the pay-per-views with John McCain and all the politicians. It was off air, and I used to have to go to SureDog.com and watch read the play-by-play live to see who was winning fights between I'm trying to think what would have been. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head that was blocked, like Tito Ortiz versus Yuki Kondo, things like that. I'd have to read play by play, and that's how hardcore it was. I remember going to Mohegan Sun and talking to the tap out crew for like an hour because the place was empty. And I remember when you'd walk the streets and you see someone with another tap out shirt on, 15 years ago, only MMA fans wore tap out stuff. So you would see that and get excited, and almost you'd have a bond, and you start talking MMA, and it was like this hidden like matrix culture that only we knew about. So, and then now here we are today.
Always passionate Keith. Got quite the story behind his MMA experience. It started with WWF. That was I wasn't really expecting that. That's pretty cool, actually. Zach, what got you into MMA?
So I think it was maybe 7th or 8th grade whenever UFC 43 first happened, which was Randy Couture versus Chuck Liddell, the first one. Where Randy Couture just kind of whooped Liddell. My uncle, he was a big like MMA fan. He made me watch it, and at the time I also liked WWE. I thought this was kind of cool that it was actual real punching in the face, and sorry, Peck, wrestling's not real. And and so it kind of like intrigued me a little bit. So that year for Christmas, I just asked for only UFC DVDs. That's all I asked my parents. So I got like from UFC 43 to like UFC 52 at the time or whatever it was. And then I started wrestling in high school, and it just blew up from there. That's all I did, and I actually thought I was going to become a fighter until got into the striking aspect of it, and I didn't like getting punched in the face too much. So I said, this ain't for me. But yeah, I've been following it since basically 7th or 8th grade whenever UFC 43 came out.
Zach, how old are you?
I'm 24.
Jeez.
Old man Keith.
I've been,
you guys definitely more seasoned than me. I've only been around coming up on a year now. Exciting time to be around. And we got McGregor doing his thing. We got young prospects coming up, Sage Northcutt, and all kinds of good stuff going on now. Let's jump into UFC 201. We'll jump into the main card. And the first fight on the main card was something like I'd never seen before, especially being a newer fan of the UFC. Ryan Benoit defeats Freddie Serrano in one of the wackiest fights I've ever seen. By the end of it, Serrano's doing somersaults towards Benoit's general direction. Zach, what were your thoughts on that fight? Did they get the decision yet?
Here's the thing, it realistically should have been a draw because it was just such a weird fight. It wasn't even that it was like a crazy like badass fight. It was just a very odd, strange fight, from the slams to somersaults to the weird strikes. But with both those guys, Benoit and Serrano, they put on a show to open up the show at least. It was a good weird fight. Neither of those guys are really prospects or really upper echelon guys. They're just kind of middle of the pack. So, you can't really expect much from either one of those guys. They did what they were supposed to do, which was a weird fight, I guess.
I certainly agree with that. It was definitely an eye-opener. You're right. It did kind of draw your attention in, at least, just because you're trying to figure out what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
Keith, what were your thoughts on that fight? Do you think it should have been a draw?
No, I don't think it should have been a draw, but I also don't think Benoit, which is how you pronounce his name, should have won. I think Freddie Serrano won, even though he was doing weird shit. The third round, Benoit won. The second round, Serrano won, and it comes down to the first round, how you scored the first round. Now, Benoit landed a big shot and hurt Serrano, but Serrano picked him up a couple times. He had one of the best slams I've ever seen. But the thing about these guys is you got to remember the Justin Scoggins Ian McCall fight was supposed to be the kickoff to the card, and then Scoggins had the weight cut issue, and that got scrapped. And this fight was supposed to be on the Fight Pass prelims. It got bumped all the way to the main card, kicking off the main card. But Benoit he's 9-4 in MMA. He's only 26, I think. He's got some pretty good wins. I mean, Soriano's a decent win, even though I don't think he won. And he knocked out Sergio Pettis already, and a very controversial one because he knocked out Sergio Pettis. And he actually, if you check it on YouTube, it's on YouTube. After he knocked out Sergio Pettis, he kicked him when the referee jumped in. The referee clearly jumped in, and then Benoit kicked him while he was down. You could actually argue that he should have got disqualified or something. But the thing about Soriano, I think the guy's 36, 37 years old. He's only has 4 fights in MMA, and 3 of them has been in the UFC. And this is his first loss in the UFC. I think he should have won. I think he should be 3-0 in the UFC. This guy he's from Colombia. He's a big-time wrestler. He wrestled in the Pan Am Games, which I also wrestled in. Not really. I was just kidding. So that right there, it means he's elite of elite wrestling. He kind of got into sport late, but he was trying these weird shit. He was doing spinning back fists, and he was doing axe kicks to the guy's shoulders and trying crazy stuff. But for a guy who's only in his 4th UFC fight, I don't think it was that bad until he started doing these cartwheels and somersaults and whatever stuff he was doing. But a lot of that actually reminds me, if you go back to a lot of the old Pancrase and Rings and even some Pride, guys like Kusushi Sakuraba used to do stuff like that to get entries because the guy would stand back and be like, what the hell's he doing to close distance. So I kind of understand to a sense what he was trying to do, but obviously we're so far advanced now than we were even 10 years ago that stuff's not even work, even for a wrestler on his level. But I don't think the fight was as bad as people are talking about. I actually was pretty entertained by it.
Like I say, it wasn't a bad fight. It was different. It wasn't your traditional MMA match. There was weird shit going on the whole fight.
I just think about there is somebody somewhere who got invited to a UFC party for the very first time. They're hanging out with friends, and the very first MMA fight they've ever saw was Freddie Soriano doing somersaults.
Yeah.
And they instantly lost a fan right there. There's an instant, either that or I don't know, maybe start getting some gymnastic fans in here.
Yeah, you bring a boxing fan around trying to get them into MMA, and they look at that and they just laugh at you. No way.
Yeah. I was trying to think of a famous gymnast. Maybe they would start following MMA now.
Gabby Douglas, there you go.
Yeah, there you
go. Next fight on the card was Eric Perez versus Francisco Rivera. Perez took a unanimous decision, and I think it was pretty obvious. I don't have any gripes with that. Why did I root for Perez? Because he wore a mask out to the cage. That's why I root for Perez. What are your guys' thoughts on the fight?
So Perez, he's a interesting guy. The mask, but his fighting style is exciting. You know, he brings a fight. What's the other guy? The other guy just blanked out his name.
Francisco Rivera.
Now Francisco Rivera, he's actually fought some top contenders. Hasn't beat any of them, but he's fought some top contenders because he's once again another just wild fighter. As you saw in that 3rd round, the first 20 seconds in, he just started swinging for the fences, which was crazy. He could have saved a little bit of that, but I guess he figured he was losing anyway. You might as well go out with a bang. With him, I mean, he's an exciting fighter, so he shouldn't be cut, even though I think he's, 1-4 in the UFC. Now I think you can correct me on that one, Keith. Perez, on the other hand, he has potential, but I don't think he's lived up to it. So for him, they need to bring him along slowly if they're going to want to, use his potential.
Perez, he was kind of a hyped up prospect not too long ago. He's still I don't have his age. I'm trying to pull it up right now. He's still young. And I thought he looked really good. I thought it was one of the best performances of his career. Um, he's been sidelined with a lot of injuries. He's got 6 losses, but he's only 26, and he's been fighting in the UFC. I don't have how many fights in it, but he's been fighting the UFC for a while. This is obviously, I think this is his biggest win to date. Francisco Rivera has lost, I believe, like 5 of his last 6 fights, but usually against some pretty good guys. But he got dominated. I thought, I know I saw somebody on Sports Talk say it should be a split decision. I don't think so at all. I thought Perez clearly won all 3 rounds. The only round that I thought was even close was the first round. Rivera kind of came out doing what Rivera does. Rivera, he's kind of a John Lineker JV version, where he comes out and he throws he's throwing bombs right from the beginning, all power shots. And he actually was connected pretty good in the first half of the first round. And Perez just got long, used adjustments, started throwing combinations, keeping him on the outside, mixed in takedowns, and Rivera had no shot. The one thing about Perez that and this thing was promoted as the 2 Mexican fighters are promoting that angle, and the Mexican fighters are trying to do that the angle from the boxers willing to take one to give one kind of thing. And Perez came out in the 3rd round and did his best Max Holloway, let's stand in the middle and bang it out, which to me, I mean, obviously for fans, that was exciting. But if I was his coach, I would have flipped out on him, because Rivera's only shot, especially going into the 3rd shot, was to land a bomb. You got a guy who's known for having power in the 3rd round, and suddenly you're going to give him a chance to knock him out. Luckily, Rivera's gas tank sucks, and he threw so many bombs he actually knocked himself over. But overall, it was a pretty good fight, and I'd like to see Eric Perez face like a top 15, top 20 guy. I think I'm trying. I don't know who off the top of my head, but I don't know. Someone in the top 15, maybe a Eddie Wineland or someone like that. I think he should definitely get a step up in competition. I don't think Perez is going to ever be a title contender. I mean, he's a longy, rangy fighter. He used that pretty good. But one thing he lacks, he doesn't really have a lot of power. But I could see him cracking the top 10, lower end of top 10 one day.
Definitely a guy that we can keep our eye on going forward. Now you mentioned the lack of power in Perez. That can move us on over to a pretty much a hit it or lose guy in Jake Ellenberger, who defeated Matt Brown in the 1st round by knockout. I was shocked for most people. I dumb lucked my way into that pick on your pick in DraftKings. I remember I went to a fight in Newark, New Jersey, and Ellenberger was on the card, and he got destroyed. Don't remember who he fought, but he got destroyed. And the whole way leading up to the fight, I just remember them talking about he's got knockout power, yada, yada, yada. And then he kind of got planted when I saw him live. But it looks like he came out and really shared that against Matt Brown. Is that a compliment to Ellenberger? And is he saving his career in a sense, or is that more of a knock on Matt Brown not being prepared?
So here's my take on this. One, I wrote Ellenberger off maybe 2 or 3 fights ago because he just keeps getting knocked out. And it's not getting like losing,
Hey,
by TKO.
hey guys, hold on. I want to break this right now. I'm sorry, I'll let you finish, but I don't want anybody else to break this on Sports Talk. I just got a tweet from SureDog.com. They're saying Tyrone Woodley versus George St. Pierre is in the works, and SureDog is pretty reliable source. So go ahead, finish. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's actually pretty big, and I'll get back to that later when we start talking about Tyrone Woodley. But so Jake Ellenberger's been brutally knocked out his last couple of fights, and I guess the UFC was actually going to cut him, but he begged and pleaded for another fight in the UFC, and Matt Brown coming off of a loss, they figured, okay, it'd be either Matt Brown kills him, ends his career, or somehow Ellenberger gets a win. And honestly, it was the biggest surprise of the whole card, in my opinion. I didn't see Ellenberger knocking out Matt Brown, but I also think Matt Brown's highly overrated. Everyone's been talking up because he went on like a 7-fight win streak, and then all of a sudden fought Robbie Lawler. He lost to Robbie Lawler. He beat, I think, Tim Means after that, and then he lost to Damian Maia's last fight. I just think he's just a Muay Thai fighter that's tough. He's in your face, but honestly, I don't think he's good at all. And you saw that by Ellenberger, dropped him right off the bat, and then just something you don't see often, that perfectly placed liver kick. Donald Cerrone got hit by that, by Anthony Pettis, and I think more people, if you're fighting a southpaw, should throw that liver kick. I mean, it's there, it's open. So just one of those things, is Ellenberger going to be a top contender? No. But in my opinion, Matt Brown most definitely should be fighting only top 15 guys, not even in the top 10 anymore, until he can, work his way back in.
Justin, what was the main event of that fight you went to? I'm trying to figure out who he was fought that night.
That was Rumble Johnson and Bader.
Oh, Bader, yeah. So yeah, that was actually all right. I got it up here. That was his last fight before Matt Brown was against Tariq Saffiedine. He lost to the unanimous decision. Pretty one-sided decision where Saffiedine kind of does what Saffiedine is. Saffiedine plays it safe a lot, and he could have. Yeah, he probably could have taken Ellenberger out. I was shocked by the Ellenberger fight. I thought that Matt Brown should have been. I thought it'd be a unanimous pick on DraftKings or pretty close to it. I picked him. I lost big on that. Ellenberger. All right, there's positives and negatives. It's nice. It's a nice story. Like Zach talked about how he was about to get cut from the UFC, and he actually talked himself into another fight. And they threw him Matt freaking Brown, who's just an absolute murderer, a guy who just loves violence. I think he's a lot more technical than Zach gives him credit for. I think Matt Brown's pretty good, it seemed to me a lot like when Josh Koscheck fought Robbie Lawler, when Lawler was fighting in lower shows, and he got brought in after Koscheck had a couple losses, and Lawler was kind of supposed to be just a rebound fight for Koscheck, a big name to get casual fans thinking it's an impressive fight. And Lawler was supposed to be brought to the slaying, and then all of a sudden, bam, Lawler catches Koscheck, and everyone's like, oh, shit, I didn't expect that. And that's kind of what I saw with Ellenberger. Now, hear me out. I don't think Ellenberger – can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry, my screen froze for a sec. I don't think Ellenberger is all of a sudden going to make a run like Robbie Lawler did and win the title fight. I mean – when I watched that fight, Ellenberger obviously landed the first big shot, 2 seconds into the fight. Almost finished him on the ground. Matt Brown scrambled. And then you see Ellenberger do this big gasp in air. And I said to myself, all right, well, that's the end of Ellenberger. He had his one shot, nice shot. You didn't finish. And Matt Brown started taking over. And you could see Ellenberger. He's having these big gas area. I mean, he kind of blew his load. And then he throws this liver kick out of nowhere. And lands it beautifully, one of the best kicks. And the cool thing is Matt Brown. I don't remember. I don't have it up in front of me, but I don't know when was the last time Matt Brown got stopped by a knockout, by a TKO. I don't remember. I mean, Robbie Lawler didn't stop him.
It's been a while if he did. Maybe because he went on like that 7-fight win streak, and then he lost to Robbie Lawler, and then he kind of just flip-flop wins losses. So I don't think he's been finished at least 3 years or so.
Yeah, minimum. I mean, I know he got submitted by Damian Maia at the very end of the fight, but I mean, I can pull it up right now. His last loss by stoppage, well, he lost. I'm trying to say by knockout or like a TKO or something. I don't think he's ever been. He's never been. Yeah, I don't think he's ever been taken out by. Yeah, he's never been stopped in the UFC by TKO in the UFC. And Jake Ellenberger, who I am joking with a friend, like, how the hell is Jake Ellenberger still getting main card fights, getting followed around by Embedded, and suddenly he gets a knockout. I wouldn't bet on Ellenberger's next fight. I think that was kind of a grand hurrah. I think almost, his next fight in the UFC is pretty inevitable. He's probably just collecting a paycheck. But I've been wrong before. I mean, I remember when Andrei Arlovsky got brought in to fight Brendan Schaub, I thought that was, even though I thought Schaub won that fight, but I didn't think Arlovsky would go on the run he did. So maybe Ellenberger has it. I know Jorge Masvidal called out the winner of Brown versus sorry guys, I know I'm walking around. I had to get my charger before my phone does. He called out Brown and and Ellenberger winner, and Ellenberger says he accepts that fight. I think that's a great fight. Stylistically, I think Masvidal will kill him. But like I said, I had a horrible night picks the other night. So what the hell do I know?
Fair enough. Let me go back to the liver kick just for a second. How hard do you get kicked that you collapse on the ground, and as this guy's swinging for the fences at your face, you're covering your ribs? That's how hard that kick was.
Yeah.
Crazy. I've never been kicked in the liver, so I can't say firsthand. But if you notice, anytime someone has got liver kicked and it's been a knockout, they are instantly dropped to the floor, crunching their ribs, and that's it. So I don't ever want to get kicked in my liver, and I want to really find out.
So somewhere Bass Rutten is really proud. When he used to commentate in Pride and someone get a shot to the body, he'd scream out, "Liver kick!" So somewhere Bass was very happy watching that.
All right, well, moving on now to the next fight. Another one that seemed pretty unanimous in what everybody was picking, and a lot of people were wrong. Karolina Kowalkiewicz.
Not us, Justin. We weren't wrong.
And Rose Namajunas.
So here's my
Karolina takes the split decision. I thought it should have been unanimous, personally. What did you guys think of that fight? I thought Rose should have been able to do more on the ground than she was able to.
So, I didn't really get to watch a lot of Carolina. I only saw Carolina fight once before this. Rose, I know how Rose fought, so obviously she's the favorite. She's the younger, more athletic, in my opinion, more gifted, per se, in athleticism and just skill-wise. Her jiu-jitsu is great. Carolina was a question mark for me. After watching that fight, you realize Carolina's game. Her stand-up is very good. That clinch work, those knees to the body, those elbows, was really, really good. You got to look at Rose. She's still real raw. She's only 24 years old. She's still trying to figure out that whole athleticism with her aggression. Earlier in her career, she was real aggressive, but that cost her against Carla, whatever the fuck her last name is, and so she went more to a more tactical approach. When she fought Paige, slower pace, just beat her up. When she fought Tisha Torres, that could have been, Tisha might have won that fight. I was there live. It was real close, but she fought very safe, I would say. Didn't do anything crazy. And this fight, once again, she didn't go out there that killer instinct that she needs to just go in there and release the beast. Honestly, she's athletic enough to do that fancy stuff, those spinning back fists, those spinning kicks. She's long and lanky. She should be pushing people against the cage. And her jiu-jitsu is good enough that if someone takes her down, it's not a big deal, kind of like the Diaz brothers. They're not worried to get taken down because on their back, they're going to submit you. And that's kind of how I feel Rose should do. Now, Carolina, she's real impressive. Like I said, her clinch work, awesome. She deserves a shot at my girl, Joanna. It's going to be real exciting to see those girls fight in the clinch because Joanna is a monster in the clinch. And they're both Polish, so it's kind of cool to see two Polish chicks fight. I think Joanna will win that fight just because Carolina experience-wise. But, Carolina surprised me. I didn't know much about her. Now I do.
I think this was the best fight of the night. I thought it was the most competitive. It was one I was looking most forward to, so I was really happy that it really didn't disappoint. It's so funny because when I first was breaking down the fight in my head, I really favored Carolina in the stand-up especially on the outside, and because she usually throws so many punches and so many kicks that I thought she would just overwhelm her with power. But I really gave Rose the advantage on the ground. And the funny thing is, it almost seemed was like the opposite. On the outside was where Rose got her most success. In the first round, she was landing her jab and her straight right over and over again. And then she had this little short left hook she kept landing in the exchanges. And it really looked like she was going to start taking over. But right at the end of the first round, Carolina got that clinch and just started destroying the body. And from the very last minute of the first round, she just got into that clinch area, and Rose had no answer. And Carolina was actually taking Rose down. I don't know. Do you guys want to talk about? We're gonna talk about Joanna versus her. All right, I guess we are. I obviously that's the fight to make. They're both Polish, which obviously you have that angle. Dana White's already talked about he'd want to do a fight in Poland and then two main event and probably on a Fight Pass as the main event for a Fight Pass. I'm assuming. I could see where Carolina could beat her. If you watch the fight with Claudia had her success getting into the clinch against Joanna, and Claudia won the clinch. Joanna kept going for this instead of fighting for underhooks and getting out. She kept fighting off inside and pushing away, and it wasn't working. If Carolina can get in there, she could win that. That said, I think Joanna kills her. Just for us, where Rose had success on the outside, that's where Joanna's the best at with her push kicks. Her jab is even better than Rose's. Her overhand right is better than Rose. Her hooks are better than Rose. She's more aggressive. I would really like the champion to win that one, but that's an exciting fight. And Rose, I don't think Rose looked that bad. She's got a good ground game. She's very slick jiu-jitsu, and I thought her stand-ups gotten better. I thought she lost to Tisha Torres, even though it was a screaming close fight. Could have went either way. And this fight, I mean, I still think she's a top 5 girl. I don't know. Like, if she fought Carlo Esparza again, I think she might beat her. Obviously, she has to stop the takedown. But I think the two Polish chicks might be the only ones that could beat her right now. I would like to see maybe Jessica Andrade in her after her last performance. I think that'd be a killer fight and a nice fight to do. Who would you guys like to see Rose fight?
Rose is interesting because she's still young, so they don't have to throw her, right off the bat into a top 4 person. Most definitely, I don't think she's ready for a Claudia. I think Claudia kills her. But I could see her against Carla. I could see her against Jessica Andrade. I could see her, Valerie Letourneau. She just lost, so you put 2 girls that just lost against each other. You have Jessica Penne, who basically they just need someone to just kill her, which will give Rose her confidence back, because I think she destroys Jessica Penne. There's a couple options, but I don't think they need to throw her at top 5. I'd say you throw her in that 6 to 10 range, let her get her confidence back and build her back up. Because right now you got some contenders. You got, they're going to fight Carolina. I don't know if they're going to fight this year because there's no more real events that they can throw in unless it's a Fight Pass in Poland, maybe towards later in the year. So Rose, there's no reason to rush her in anyone. I want to see Claudia versus Jessica Andrade or Claudia versus Carla, to be honest. Claudia's not that far off from being a number 1 contender again.
I could see Rose versus Michelle Waterson if she wins.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're built similar. They're both good looking. I could see that.
You put that matchup. Well, now you're killing potentially a potential title challenger. Michelle's easy to sell because
she's good looking.
Yeah, she's the hottie or whatever the hell her nickname is.
The karate hottie.
The karate hottie, and she's fun to watch. So if she loses, well, you just lost her. Her fire. If Rose loses 2 in a row, well, what do you do about that? I think you can match her up with someone that she can win, and someone that if she beats isn't really a true title contender yet.
Yeah, well, Michelle Waterson's actually matched up against Ashley Daling. I'm not sure soon. I don't know if she's gonna win that match. I was just thinking I could see the UFC doing that. They like to put the 2 good-looking girls against each other. I can see Felice Herring getting a shot.
Felice Herring's out there. Put Felice versus.
She just won her last fight. She looked good in her last fight.
I mean, the strawweight division is actually very good. In my opinion, it's way better than the women's bantamweight division right now. all those girls are good. Obviously, Joanna and Claudia, I think, are at the top of the pedestal. But those girls 2 through 10 are all interchangeable in my opinion.
I could definitely see that, guys. I think you're in the right range. Get Rose a fight where she can get another win. They don't ruin her. They let her get her confidence back. What I see with Rose, I was actually very impressed with her striking. Like Keith said, I thought that was Carolina's hands down. That was going to be her part of the fight. But Rose actually did really well there. And it did seem a little backwards, as Rose is somebody who's a lot better on the ground than you would think Carolina would be. And, it seems like she got her in a lot of different places. She just couldn't finish any of them off. I think that's what she really needs, is just to finish somebody on the ground on the first or second submission attempt. It seems like people escape her a lot. I'm not sure why. I'm not as technically into it as you guys are to see.
I think it's hard to get a submission in the third round. You're both sweaty. She's got those long, lanky arms, so it's a pro and a benefit. I mean, pro and con, because as you're getting slippery, those arms have to now go even farther, right, for a submission. Well, you're more slippery, it just slides right off. Sometimes shorter, more compact people can get those third round submissions because it's more chokes tight in the space where you don't have to really worry. You try to do an arm bar in the third round, that girl's arm slides out. You try to do man, I'm fucking forgetting shit right now. But either way, she needs to go in there and attack right off the bat. First round, take a girl down while they're still dry before that sweat gets in. Because she does have slick submissions. She's been doing jiu-jitsu, I think, since she was 10 years old or something like that. So it's not like she doesn't have the jiu-jitsu skills. It's just, I feel like in the third round, she has trouble. Same thing against Paige Van Zandt. How many times did Paige Van Zandt get out of her submissions?
Like 7 or 8.
Yeah, it was like 10 submissions she got out of. And I don't think it's Rose's fault. I just think it's the slickness of the sweat.
You have to have a lot of blood in that one, too.
I think that was the slickness of the blood.
Yeah. And the blood, yeah.
All right, main event on the card, Tyron Woodley versus Robbie Lawler. Keith and I had Lawler. Zach, you were the man. You had Woodley. You were right. Now, you did predict the fight to go to Woodley. Did you predict for it to happen like that fast?
I didn't think it would be a first-round KO, mainly because I thought there would be a lot of feeling out. And Woodley hasn't fought in a while, so maybe I thought he would be take it, get his feet wet, his body, back used to be in the cage. But he came right off the bat and said, fuck it, I'm going to throw some jabs. I'm going to do what he was supposed to do, which was fake takedowns, throw the jabs, and he had Robbie reacting. And, one thing that I noticed Robbie Lawler did that he normally doesn't, Robbie Lawler likes to come forward. Tyron Woodley took the center of the cage. Tyron Woodley pushed Lawler back. You do that against a wrestler, Tyron Woodley now has you potentially against the cage. So if he shoots him for a takedown, he's going to clench with you, hold you against the cage. And that's why Robbie Lawler, what did he do? He dropped his hand. The moment Woodley slightly fainted, and we all know Woodley's right hand is probably one of the nastiest right hands in all of MMA. It's so fast and explosive. And just like that, caught him right off the bat. And I called it, I said it'd be within 3 rounds he'd finish Robbie Lawler. I think Robbie Lawler's been in a lot of wars. Not saying his chin is diminishing, but the guys he's fought, you look back, okay, Matt Brown hits pretty hard. But in their fight, Matt Brown never really a clean shot against Johnny Hendricks. Hendricks became more of a wrestler after he lost to GSP. He stopped throwing as much. He started more worried about, let me hold you against the cage and try to take you down. So he really didn't, clock Robbie a bunch of times with his right hand. Rory McDonald does not have knockout power in his hands at all. He's a good jab and a good straight right, but not knockout power. Carlos Condit has power, but it comes from hooks and clean shots. He doesn't get you with that one punch straight down the middle, knocks you out. Tyron Woodley hits like a Mack truck, and it comes at a split second. And so I just thought, because of that, he's a superior athlete, his wrestling's better. People want to say, well, he's similar to Johnny Hendricks. No, Johnny Hendricks has an overhand right, decent leg kicks, and likes to hold you against the cage. Tyron Woodley's faster, more explosive. In my opinion, I think he's a little bit stronger. His right hand's more powerful, and he can damage you with kicks, his left hand, his right hand, and if not, he shoots more of a, instead of just grinding you against the cage, he shoots actual single legs, double legs, and actually tries to take you down for a ground and pound. So, I mean, it wasn't a real surprise. The surprise was just that it ended in 2 minutes.
Well, my breakdown of the fight took a lot longer than the actual fight itself. So there's nothing more embarrassing than writing a big long write up and putting it out there for 5,000 people can read and get embarrassed real quick. So I mean, I had a better night than Robbie Lawler, but not much better. Stylistically, I thought that was an easy fight, Robbie Lawler. I've never been that impressed with Tyron Woodley. Even going, if you told me back when Tyron Woodley was fighting in Strikeforce that he would be a future UFC welterweight champion, which at the time, was George St. Pierre and guys like that was running it, I would have laughed at you. This guy, and if you told me he would have won by knockout, Tyron Woodley, when he was fighting in Strikeforce, his whole game was to shoot takedowns. He had no stand-up at all. Even when he was fighting like Knight Marquardt, he wasn't a stand-up guy. And then all of a sudden, this right hand comes out of nowhere the last couple of years. And it's kind of like what happened with Dan Henderson. Everyone remembers Dan Henderson now as this big striker, but you go back to the early days of when he was his first stint in the UFC and early Pride, he was strictly a wrestler. They just shot him for takedowns. And then all of a sudden he got this power because wrestlers have this base that they can set their feet and have this base and land this big right hand. Woodley's basically, to me, is like a more explosive black version of Dan Henderson, which is a compliment. I mean that like no diss. He closes distance as good as I'm trying to think of guys that close distance that good. I mean, St. Pierre and Fedor are the two that come to mind where he can get in a range that wasn't there. I mean, he did it with Koscheck. I think he did it with Dong Young Kim. And now he's done it with Lawler, where he gets in a range that you don't think that a guy could close it that good. Robbie Lawler has been hit with bombs. He's been hit over 700 times in the last 3 years or something. 700 significant strikes in the last 3 years. But to land one shot like that and put Robbie Lawler out, there's a lot of guys out there that are talking junk. How many guys has won a title with one punch and then got hated on like Tyron Woodley has? I don't know. I mean, maybe Matt Serra to it. That's probably it. But most guys, when guys come in and they start knocking guys out with one punch, all of a sudden they get almost overhyped. And Tyron Woodley is the opposite. One thing I noticed in this game was how much he came out, like Zach was saying. He came out, took the center, and he was being aggressive. If you watch his fights, like his fight against Rory McDonald, he did nothing. He just gave the fight away. He was almost like he was starstruck to be in a title contend. That's what gave Rory McDonald the title fight. Like he was scared to be in that moment. And even with Kelvin Gastelum, there was a lot of moments where he wasn't pulling the trigger. So I was worried that Woodley might land a big shot to win it. But other than that, if Robbie Lawler could get past the second or third round, I really thought he'd start picking him apart. I thought he was a better striker. I thought he'd be able to stuff Woodley's takedowns, and I was wrong. I know right away everybody is now starting to jump off of the Warriors have taken its toll on Robbie Lawler, which could be true. But we also were saying that about Junior Dos Santos not too long ago, and then he had one of his best performances recently. So to be a guy who was in the top 10 pound for pound to all of a sudden to be done, I think people are starting to already write Robbie Lawler off way too early.
Yeah. I don't think you could write off Robbie Lawler. I don't think it could it be the Wars? We won't know until 2 or 3 fights down the line. I just think if Tyron Woodley hits anyone with his right hand like that, you're going out. I don't care who you are. You want to play Stephen Wonderboy? Wonderboy's going to he's going to be knocked the fuck out. He's already got a weak chin. GSP, that's the fight that might be set up, maybe Madison Square Garden. If GSP's not ready, he's going to get knocked out. Any of those welterweights, I don't think anyone could take that Woodley overhand right. And that's just a fact.
That I absolutely agree with. Robbie's famous for being able to get punched in the head and, not go down. But like you said, that punch to anybody, I think they're going down. It doesn't matter who you are, how strong your chin is, none of that. Getting hit in that spot with that power, I agree.
So I know you guys got to get out of here soon. So we've already gone over our 30 minutes. Um, what should be next for Johnny Hendricks? I mean, sorry, not Johnny. Tyron Woodley.
So Woodley after his fight on the Fox Sports One, for people who don't know, Wonder Boy actually he did the post fight for Fox Sports, and he asked Woodley, "Hey, you're healthy, you're ready to go. Are we going to be fighting soon?" And Woodley said, "Nah." He goes, "You've been calling out Robbie Lawler." He goes, "You can go fight Robbie Lawler." He's like, "I'm trying to make some money. I want Nick Diaz, who's coming off suspension in 2 days, or GSP." He's like, "I want to make money. I've been doing this for a while, so let me get a money fight." And for people who don't know, Nick Diaz did get off suspension yesterday, and they asked him about it, and Nick Diaz, in true form, is a fucking idiot, and basically just said he doesn't really care about the fight Woodley unless the price is right. So Woodley today announced that he doesn't even care to fight Nick Diaz anymore just because he's an idiot, and he wanted to fight GSP, and now, as Keith said earlier, that they're potentially working on that. So that's a huge fight. I'm a huge GSP fan. Not the fight I would like to see GSP fight. I don't think it's that big of a fight for him, besides for the title. Is it winnable for GSP? Yeah. But also at the same time, Tyron Woodley now has his confidence in that right hand. I don't want to see GSP come in and get knocked out. I would have preferred Nick Diaz versus Tyron Woodley. Just Nick Diaz makes everything exciting. I think that's an easier fight for Tyron Woodley. But I say, hey, you know what? Let GSP fight Tyron Woodley and let Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler. Let's do that rematch.
That's funny because I was going to suggest that. I think that's a great fight for both guys. So to me, the three options that you keep hearing, obviously, is Stephen Thompson, George St. Pierre now, and Nick Diaz. Stephen Thompson deserves the title fight, but we were talking, other guys were talking on thread. The only guy to me that I think that could make an argument to jump over Stephen Thompson is George St. Pierre. St. Pierre left as a champion. No one took the belt from him. He's the greatest. He's the greatest welterweight of all time, if not the greatest MMA fighter of all time, who I rank number one in my rankings, if you guys remember. That's the only guy. I'm not going to sit here and break down St. Pierre versus Woodley because St. Pierre hasn't fought in 3 years. And if he fights in November in Madison Square Garden, it'd be exactly 3 years. For me to, who knows? I mean, the wrestling, a wash. Striking, St. Pierre a little more technical. Woodley stronger. But who knows? We don't know what St. Pierre is. So for me to pretend to know, I know Stephen Thompson has recently trained with him and says St. Pierre hasn't lost a step at all. I've heard that about a lot of fighters. I've heard that when they're going to fight and that's the best camp they ever had, blah, 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 blah. So Stephen Thompson, I think, is a bad matchup for Woodley. I think Stephen Thompson is a bad matchup for everybody. His striking is arguably the best striking in MMA right now. I can't think of someone that I would favor in a striking matchup against Stephen Thompson in all of MMA. But Derek Bolin, or how you say his name, he was saying of everybody to beat Thompson, he thinks that Woodley would have the best shot. And I agree to what he's saying. I think Woodley would beat him. I'm sorry, I think Thompson would beat him. But if anybody's going to beat Thompson, you're either going to out-wrestle him or you're going to land one big bomb. And who in the division can land that one big bomb? I know, like, people saying, well, look at the Hendricks matchup. You got a wrestler who throws this big overhand left, which is similar to Ferguson's overhand right. But I agree with Zach. I think Ferguson's faster than Hendricks. I think he's stronger than Hendricks, even though Hendricks is crazy strong himself. He obviously has better weight, making weight, things like that. But the most importantly, sorry, my kid came over to distract me. I don't know what I was gonna say. Just and then Nate Diaz. To me, obviously I understand the argument. You put Diaz, if you can get Diaz, who hasn't fought, and obviously Woodley, who obviously is not going to be injured with his short fight. If they can get him fight 3 weeks from now, you're adding a great fight, on by name wise to a already stacked card with the two brothers on the same card and everything. But on the flip side, you're talking about a guy that hasn't fought in a year and a half, hasn't won in 5 years. How can you throw Nate? How can you? To me, like Jay Martin was saying, I totally agree with him. You really just basically diss the rankings and diss the sport if you're going to give a guy a title fight who hasn't won a fight in 5 years.
And I made the point also, with Jay. Right now, we're in the money era. Okay, Floyd Mayweather showed how to be rich in the fight game. You pick and choose your battles. You don't have to fight the number one contender. You're the champion. You have to sign the contract. You think the UFC is just going to cut you because you don't want to sign the contract? No. Same thing is with Floyd. If you can get a fight where you feel you can make more money and potentially win, you're going to do it. Michael Bisping called out Dan Henderson. Did Dan Henderson deserve a title shot? Hell no. You got Jacare waiting. You have Yoel coming off his suspension. You're going to have a rematch with Luke Rockhold. You can put Weidman at Madison Square Garden in New York. It's going to go ballistic. Okay? But what's going to sell a lot of tickets and a lot of pay-per-views? Dan Henderson going over to England and fighting Michael Bisping. So that's where I see the Nick Diaz coming in. Is Nick Diaz, his name is probably, he's a top 5 draw in all of UFC, in my opinion, in all of MMA. He could fight a broomstick and people are going to go watch it. Okay? So I can understand where Tyron wants to fight. Do I think he deserves a title shot? Hell no. I don't think he's that good. I think Nate's a little better than him. But right now, just like Conor McGregor gets to call the shots. McGregor wants to do whatever the hell he wants. UFC's going to say, all right, just bring us the money. If Tyron wants to fight Nick Diaz and Nick Diaz wants to, they throw Nick $1 million. You think Nick's going to turn that down? He'll fight him in 3 weeks. I guarantee it.
Of course he would.
But the thing is, Nick Diaz probably pop for marijuana and be gone for another 2 or 3 years. So he only wants to fight those fights where he knows he's going to cash in on $1 million, $2 million, get some pay-per-view buys, and then sit out for a while. Wonder Boy deserves a shot, and I think Tyron Woodley beat Wonder Boy. I'm a huge Wonder Boy fan, but if you watch all his fights, his chin is very suspect. Tyron's fast enough to hit him, and if Tyron gets in a little bit of trouble, I think his double leg is always there in the back of his head. He can shoot in and just lay him. Stephen Wonder Boy.
Looks we got another great debate coming.
Yeah.
Line them up. It's 2-2 now, right, guys?
Yep.
2-2.
All tied up. Great debate. I love it.
We haven't had a close fight yet. That's the funny thing. These are supposed to be close. These are supposed to be close, hard to pick fights.
Yeah, right. And then like one of you is just blatantly wrong.
The two I got wrong were that my guys didn't even land punches. You guys want to make a prediction on? I know you guys want to get out of here. Let's make a prediction on this Saturday's main event, and then we'll close up.
So Yair Rodriguez versus Black Leroy.
Yeah, Bruce Leroy.
This is just a matchup strictly for Yair to get huge publicity. Yair is probably one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC that nobody really even realizes yet. And I think that's what this matchup is. You got Bruce Leroy, who's going to go in there and throw some spinning, funky stuff. You got Yair, who is just wild and does not care and has knockout power, good submissions. He's good everywhere. So I think Yair is going to finish Bruce Leroy within 2 rounds. I don't think Bruce Leroy deserves a main event. I don't think he's that good. And I think it's just a strictly to put Yair on the map, and so Mexico has their star. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Yair is this is what they're trying to reach into the boxing fan. Be quiet. Sorry. They're trying to reach into the huge boxing fan base of Mexico. That's what they tried doing with Cain Velasquez. They tried it with Roger Horta. Now they're doing with Yair Rodriguez. The funny thing, the guy was born in Mexico. He grew up in Chicago, so he's not even. The Mexican fans wouldn't even embrace him, kind of like they didn't embrace De La Hoya. They embraced other Mexican fighters like the guy they're doing the movie about and stuff like him. I can't think of his name, but they didn't embrace De La Hoya because he's not what they would consider a true Mexican. I just rewatched both Alex Karalex's fight with Cole Miller and Yair Rodriguez's last fight with Andre Fili. Before I watched those fights, I thought for sure that this is an easy matchup for Yair Rodriguez. I still think he wins. I think he wins fairly easily. But there was some things I saw in the game that I was Andre Fili hit him with two or three good shots in the first round, and Alex Karalexis is left-handed. He landed a lot of good combinations on Cole Miller. The reason why obviously I would take Rodriguez is his arrow's going up, where I also think Karalexis is going up. But you're talking about a guy who's 12-8. His fight right before he fought Cole Miller, he was a huge underdog to Cole Miller in a fight that he's clearly winning. Arguably, the second round could have been a 10-8 round. He almost gets beat in the third round and submitted. So, because that's the things, that's the position he puts himself in. I think Rodriguez will catch him too. I think he puts him out in the second round.
You know, with MMA right now, anything can honestly happen. I don't think there's any real true 10-1 favorites anymore. As we've been watching, there's been upsets after upset, title changes are changing. You know, so can Bruce Leroy catch him with a kick? Can he catch him with a punch? Yeah. Do I see that happening? No. But I guess we'll find out on Saturday.
He's gonna liver kick him like Ellenberger.
Yeah.
Liver kicks, the new trademark in MMA. No, in the battle of Yair versus the Hair, Bruce Leroy, I'm going with Yair.
Yeah, you've been working on that, huh?
I just listened to you guys say it a bunch of times in a row, so I was like really getting it down in my head.
It'd be nice if his name was pronounced the Year and the Hair.
But no, that's where I'm going with that pick for sure. In his fight against Fili was somebody I thought highly of, and I thought it was a good fight. I enjoyed watching it, but you know, I don't think there was any question about the decision in it.
Well, he knocked him out by a head kick, so
Exactly.
Yeah, with that jumping head kick.
yeah, switch kicking him. It was pretty nasty. The Andre Fili is a lot better win right now than beating Cole Miller is. So
Yeah, Cole Miller's past his prime, and the thing is, Cole Miller's not really a good striker. He's a good jiu-jitsu guy. Well, Bruce Leroy is a striker. What do? He outstruck him the first 2 rounds, beat him up, hit him with some fancy stuff, and then in the third round almost lost. You know, he gets caught by Yair. Good wrestling is actually very good. It's just his striking is what's known because he does flying stuff. He throws all caution out the wind, which is great for us fans. You know, he may be one of those guys that all of a sudden starts knocking people out, crazy stuff, and then switches to becoming a wrestler, jiu-jitsu guy. You know, GSP, all these other guys John Jones, you know, guys who play more safe. But right now, he's young, doesn't give a shit, and it's cool to watch.
yeah, he's exciting. He's definitely exciting to watch.
All right, so I guess we're wrapping it up now, fellas. That was we only went double the time that we were aiming for, but you know, 2 passionate fellas like yourselves.
But our breakdowns of the fights are deeper than MMA Tonight's. So bring in Daniel Cormier and Michael Bisping and Brian Stan and all those guys. We'll teach them how to break down fights.
And I'll teach you how to cut the commercial.
Hey, real quick, anybody who ends up watching this, some things to look out for on Sports Talks this week. I'm going to have the DraftKings League out there. I'm going to have, we still have the Pick'ems fight. I don't know, Zach, I don't know if you want to do some, try to do some rankings this week.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, want to do the new rankings this week, or do you want to wait?
I
guess there's fights for the next. Well, there's no fights each week, right?
There's no fights. I'm going to be on vacation next week, so it's a really bad week for me.
Then
So
let's do it.
I would like to get them out. If you can get them to me by tomorrow, I'll put them out by Thursday.
Okay, I'll work on it tomorrow.
All right. So yeah, new Sports Talks ranking. So who cares about the UFC? I'm all messed up. Who cares about UFC rankings or any other website rankings? Sports Talk is the official MMA rankings.
Official. All right, fellas, thank you. Excellent episode so far. Once we put a name on this bad boy, I think we can really take off with it.
It's gonna be wicked awesome.
Yeah.
All right, later, fellas. Enjoy.
See you guys. Peace.
Thank you, guys.